Last night, your soulmate finally decided it was time to choose you. Stop for a moment and stay right here, because this isn't just another comforting thought, it's a shift that already happened. While you were living your normal night, while the world was quiet and your mind was somewhere between distraction and rest, a decision was being made. Not impulsively. Not emotionally reactive. But deliberately. Last night, your soulmate reached a point they could no longer avoid, and in that stillness, they chose you. Listen closely, because this decision didn't come from excitement or pressure. It came from exhaustion. From being tired of running in circles inside their own heart. From realizing that no matter how far they drifted, no matter how many distractions they entertained, their thoughts kept returning to the same place, you. That kind of realization doesn't shout. It settles. Stay with me here, because choosing you wasn't about rejecting someone else. It was about finally telling the truth to themselves. They reached a moment where pretending not to feel what they feel became heavier than facing it. And that moment usually arrives late at night, when there's no one to impress, no noise to hide behind, and no escape from honesty. Notice this now, because your soulmate didn't decide lightly. They replayed conversations in their head. Remembered moments they dismissed at the time but suddenly understood differently. They realized how often you showed up without being asked, how consistently you felt safe, how your presence brought calm instead of confusion. Those details added up quietly until denial stopped working. Stay present for this part, because this choice didn't erase their fear. It didn't magically remove doubt. But it did override avoidance. And that's important. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's deciding something matters more than staying comfortable. Last night, you mattered more than their hesitation. Pay attention here, because while you were sleeping or scrolling or simply getting through your night, something inside you may have shifted too. Maybe you felt unusually calm. Maybe you thought of them out of nowhere. Maybe you slept deeper, or barely at all. Emotional bonds often respond before the mind understands why. Stay with me, because choosing you also meant confronting their own patterns. They had to admit where they ran when things felt real. Where they delayed instead of committing. Where they confused intensity with meaning. And in facing that, they saw how different things felt with you, steadier, clearer, more grounded. Listen carefully, because this decision wasn't dramatic. There were no fireworks. No grand gestures. It was quiet, heavy, and sincere. The kind of choice that changes behavior, not just words. The kind that doesn't need an audience to be real. Stay right here, because this doesn't mean everything suddenly becomes perfect. Choosing you doesn't erase the past. It doesn't undo confusion. What it does is create direction. And direction is powerful. It's the difference between drifting and moving forward intentionally. Notice this next truth, because your soulmate didn't choose you because you were convenient. They chose you because you were consistent. Because you didn't disappear when things got uncomfortable. Because you didn't manipulate silence or affection. Because you stayed human, not performative. Stay grounded now, because with this choice comes vulnerability. They know choosing you means being seen. It means risking rejection instead of hiding behind ambiguity. That's terrifying for someone who's used to emotional distance. And yet, they chose it anyway. Listen closely here, because you may soon notice subtle changes. More effort. More presence. A different tone. A willingness to engage instead of retreat. These are signs of internal alignment. When someone decides internally, their actions start catching up naturally. Stay with me, because timing matters. This decision came when it did because they were finally ready to stop negotiating with themselves. And readiness can't be rushed. It arrives when the cost of not choosing becomes too high. Notice something important now, because this choice doesn't put you on a pedestal. It puts you on equal ground. They didn't choose you to save them. They chose you because being with you felt honest. And honesty is the foundation of anything real. Stay present here, because part of them worried it might already be too late. Worried you'd grown tired. That you'd moved on emotionally. That they missed their chance. That fear sat with them last night too. Choosing you also meant accepting whatever response they receive. Listen carefully, because you are not obligated to rush toward this choice. Someone choosing you doesn't require you to abandon your pace or your boundaries. You are allowed to receive it calmly. To observe consistency. To let trust rebuild naturally. Stay right here, because this moment isn't about proving love, it's about alignment. Two people finally standing in the same emotional direction. That alignment may feel unfamiliar at first, especially if you're used to uncertainty. But unfamiliar doesn't mean unsafe. Notice how this lands in your body, because truth often feels quieter than fantasy. There's less adrenaline. More steadiness. Less guessing. More presence. That's what real choosing feels like. Stay grounded now, because the most important part of this isn't what they decided, it's what you decide next. Do you stay rooted in your self-respect? Do you allow actions to speak louder than promises? Do you remain open without abandoning yourself? Listen closely, because this chapter isn't about chasing or convincing anymore. It's about witnessing. Watching whether their choice translates into effort, clarity, and emotional availability. You don't need to interrogate it. You simply need to stay aware. Stay with me, because sometimes the universe waits until both people are ready, not just one. Last night, something clicked for them. And now, life will gently reveal what that choice truly means over time. Pause here, because choosing you doesn't mean perfection. It means intention. And intention, when sustained, changes everything. Stay present, because this isn't the end of uncertainty overnight, but it is the end of pretending. And that alone is a powerful beginning. Breathe. Last night, a choice was made. Not loudly. Not publicly. But honestly. And what comes next won't be about words. It will be about consistency, presence, and truth unfolding in real time. Stay here. This is only part 1. Stay right here and don't rush ahead, because part 2 begins in the quiet aftermath of that decision. The choice was made, but now comes the part that's heavier than deciding, the living with it. When someone finally chooses you internally, the world doesn't change instantly. Instead, something subtler happens. Their inner world starts reorganizing itself around that truth. Notice this carefully, because after choosing you, your soulmate didn't feel instant relief. What they felt was responsibility. Choosing you meant no longer hiding behind confusion or timing. It meant accepting that they can't keep one foot in and one foot out anymore. And that realization sat with them deeply when they woke up. Stay with me here, because the morning after a decision like that is revealing. They likely woke up thinking about you before anything else. Not romantically dramatic, but seriously. As in, what does this mean now? That question doesn't come from fantasy. It comes from commitment beginning to take shape. Listen closely, because this is where fear tries to resurface. Even after choosing you, old habits don't disappear overnight. They may feel the urge to retreat, to slow down, to test the waters before fully stepping forward. That doesn't cancel the decision, it shows how new it is to them. Stay grounded now, because choosing you forced them to look at themselves honestly. At where they've avoided depth before. At how they've handled closeness. At how often they waited until they were sure before acting, only to realize certainty never arrives without risk. Pay attention to this part, because you might sense a shift in their energy. Less chaotic. More intentional. Or sometimes quieter than usual. That quiet isn't indifference. It's adjustment. They're learning how to move differently now that they've stopped running from what they feel. Stay right here, because they're also aware that choosing you doesn't guarantee you're still waiting. That awareness brings humility. It makes them realize they don't get to control the outcome, only their effort. And effort feels vulnerable when you've been emotionally guarded. Listen carefully, because vulnerability doesn't always look like emotional speeches. Sometimes it looks like consistency. Like showing up. Like asking questions instead of assuming. Like staying present when discomfort arises instead of disappearing. Stay present for this, because your soulmate is learning something important. Choosing you means choosing growth. It means facing conversations they avoided. It means being honest about intentions instead of letting ambiguity do the work for them. Notice this shift, because it changes how they see you too. Not as someone they could come back to someday, but as someone real, someone whose feelings carry weight. That realization can be sobering. It turns possibility into responsibility. Stay grounded here, because responsibility often slows people down before it speeds them up. They may take a moment to steady themselves. To make sure their actions align with the choice they made. That pause is not hesitation, it's care. Listen closely now, because you might feel an urge to lean forward emotionally, to meet them halfway immediately. Pause. You don't need to chase alignment. Alignment reveals itself naturally through behavior over time. Stay with me, because the most powerful thing you can do now is remain exactly where you are, rooted in self-respect. Let their choice unfold without you trying to manage it. Let actions confirm what words haven't fully said yet. Notice something important here, because choosing you doesn't mean they suddenly know how to love perfectly. It means they're willing to learn. And learning requires patience, both with themselves and with you. Stay right here, because patience doesn't mean lowering standards. It means observing consistency. Seeing whether effort continues beyond the initial realization. Whether presence remains when excitement fades. Listen carefully, because part of them may worry they've already caused damage. That they waited too long. That they risked losing you by delaying this choice. That awareness can bring a mix of regret and determination. Stay grounded now, because regret can either paralyze or motivate. What matters is which one you see in their actions. Motivation shows up as follow-through. Paralysis shows up as excuses. Pay attention here, because you are not responsible for easing their regret. You don't need to reassure them into confidence. They need to build confidence through consistency, not comfort. Stay present, because this is also where trust begins to rebuild, or not. Trust isn't restored through declarations. It's restored through predictability. Through showing up the same way tomorrow, and the day after that. Listen closely now, because you may notice yourself feeling cautiously hopeful. Not swept away, but open. That's healthy. That means you're allowing space without surrendering your boundaries. Stay with me, because this stage requires balance. Openness without urgency. Curiosity without expectation. Presence without pressure. That balance protects you while allowing connection to grow organically. Notice this shift in you, because you're not waiting anymore, you're watching. Watching how they handle discomfort. How they communicate. How they show up when it would be easier not to. Stay grounded here, because watching is not passive. It's intentional. It's choosing awareness over fantasy. It's choosing to respond to reality instead of potential. Listen carefully, because your soulmate is aware now that choosing you is not a moment, it's a practice. A daily alignment. And whether they fully understand that yet will become clear through time. Stay present, because time is the great revealer. It shows whether decisions were emotional or foundational. Whether intentions were temporary or enduring. Notice how calm this feels compared to before. Less spinning. Less guessing. More clarity, even in uncertainty. That calm is not accidental. It's what happens when truth replaces avoidance. Stay with me, because you're also learning something about yourself here. You're learning that you don't need to be chosen loudly to feel valued. You need to be chosen consistently. Listen closely now, because consistency is what you're attuned to. Not intensity. Not promises. Behavior. Tone. Presence. Those are the signals that matter now. Stay grounded, because this chapter isn't about rushing toward certainty. It's about allowing something real to develop, or reveal its limits, without forcing either outcome. Pay attention here, because the universe often brings alignment slowly after long periods of confusion. It tests whether both people can meet in clarity without recreating old patterns. Stay right here, because whatever unfolds next will show you whether this choice was the beginning of something sustainable, or simply an important realization that came when it needed to. Listen carefully, because either outcome still honors you. Either outcome still affirms your worth. Either outcome still moves you forward. Stay present, because you are no longer waiting to be chosen blindly. You are choosing consciously now too. Breathe. A decision was made. Now the truth will show itself in time, effort, and presence. And you don't need to rush to know the ending. You only need to stay honest with yourself as the story continues. Stay right here and keep listening, because part 3 is where the choice begins to ripple outward into real life. A decision made in the quiet of the night doesn't stay contained forever. It starts influencing thoughts, behavior, priorities. This is the stage where choosing you stops being an internal truth and starts testing itself against reality. Notice this carefully, because after the decision settles, your soulmate begins to notice you differently. Not in a dramatic, romanticized way, but in an aware way. They notice how often you cross their mind during ordinary moments. While driving. While working. While doing things that used to distract them. You're no longer a thought they revisit only when emotions spike. You're present in the mundane. And that's significant. Stay with me here, because this is when they begin to feel the weight of what choosing you actually asks of them. It's not just emotional availability, it's consistency. It's alignment between words and actions. It's the end of convenient ambiguity. That realization can feel grounding and intimidating at the same time. Listen closely, because they may start reflecting on past behavior with new eyes. Moments where they held back. Times they avoided clarity. Instances where they sensed you pulling away and didn't step forward. These reflections aren't about guilt alone, they're about awareness. Awareness that comes when someone finally admits what they want. Stay grounded now, because awareness can be uncomfortable. It exposes patterns. It shows where growth is needed. And growth often feels like friction before it feels like progress. If you sense them moving more carefully, more thoughtfully, that's not hesitation, it's recalibration. Pay attention here, because part 3 is also where communication begins to change. Not necessarily more frequent, but more intentional. When someone has chosen you internally, they stop speaking just to fill space. They start speaking with purpose. They think before they respond. They listen more closely. Stay right here, because listening is one of the clearest signs of emotional presence. Not just hearing, but remembering. Not just responding, but considering. You may notice them referencing things you said before. Asking follow-up questions. Checking in without being prompted. Listen carefully, because this is where trust begins to re-enter the space, not fully, not blindly, but cautiously. Trust doesn't rush back in after uncertainty. It approaches slowly, watching for safety. And safety is built through predictability, not passion. Stay present, because you might feel a mix of emotions now. Hope, yes, but also caution. That caution is healthy. It's the part of you that learned from the past. You don't need to silence it. You need to let it sit beside your openness, not replace it. Notice this balance, because it's new for you. Before, you may have leaned fully into hope or fully into self-protection. Now, you're holding both. That's emotional maturity. Stay with me, because your soulmate is also navigating this balance. They're learning how to show up without overwhelming themselves or you. Learning how to stay instead of disappearing when vulnerability feels heavy. That learning curve may show up as small pauses, but watch whether they return. Listen closely here, because returning matters more than perfection. No one shows up flawlessly. What matters is whether they come back to the connection instead of abandoning it when things feel uncertain. Stay grounded, because this is also the stage where old fears may test the connection. Fear of rejection. Fear of not being enough. Fear of repeating past mistakes. Those fears don't mean the choice was wrong, they mean it matters. Pay attention now, because how someone handles fear reveals their capacity for intimacy. Do they communicate it? Do they work through it? Or do they let it control their actions? You don't need to interrogate this, you can observe it. Stay right here, because observation is your power now. You're not guessing anymore. You're watching reality unfold. You're letting behavior speak louder than reassurance. Listen carefully, because you may feel tempted to help them through their fear. To reassure them excessively. To make it easier for them to choose you again and again. Pause. They must learn to stand in their choice without being carried. Stay grounded here, because carrying someone else's emotional process eventually leads to imbalance. Healthy connection requires two people choosing each other independently, not one convincing the other to stay. Notice this truth, because you are no longer available for half choices. You've grown beyond waiting in emotional limbo. Even as you remain open, you remain clear. Stay with me, because clarity doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need ultimatums. It exists in your posture, your tone, your willingness to engage without chasing. Listen closely now, because your soulmate may sense this shift in you. Sense that you're not clinging. That you're not anxiously waiting. That you're present, but steady. That steadiness can either invite them closer or reveal their limits. Stay present, because either outcome gives you information. And information is what keeps you grounded in truth instead of fantasy. Notice how time feels different now. Slower. Less urgent. You're not counting moments or waiting for signs as intensely. You're allowing things to unfold. That patience is not passivity, it's confidence. Stay with me, because confidence grows when you trust yourself to walk away if alignment fades. Not because you want to, but because you know you can. Listen carefully, because this is where self-worth quietly anchors itself. Not in being chosen, but in knowing you deserve to be chosen fully, without hesitation. Stay grounded here, because part 3 is about redefining what commitment means to you. Commitment is no longer words spoken in emotion. It's presence shown over time. It's reliability. It's emotional availability that doesn't disappear when things get real. Notice this evolution, because it didn't happen overnight. It came from disappointment, reflection, and growth. You earned this clarity. Stay with me, because you may also feel grief for the version of yourself that waited longer than you should have. That grief is part of integration. Honor it without judgment. Listen closely now, because honoring your past doesn't mean living in it. It means learning from it and stepping forward differently. Stay present, because this stage isn't about guarantees. It's about alignment in motion. You're watching whether their choice deepens into action or remains an internal truth. Pay attention here, because you don't need to force momentum. What's real will move naturally. What's fragile will reveal itself under the weight of time. Stay grounded, because your role now is simple, but not easy. Stay honest with yourself. Stay open without abandoning boundaries. Stay observant without becoming guarded. Listen carefully, because this is how trust is rebuilt slowly, intentionally, and safely. Stay right here, because part 3 is not dramatic, but it's decisive. It's where patterns either shift or repeat. And you're finally aware enough to see the difference. Breathe. A choice was made. Now it's being tested by consistency, presence, and time. And whatever the outcome, you are no longer the same person you were before. You're clearer, steadier, and deeply rooted in self-respect. Stay right here and don't rush through this, because part 4 is where everything slows down enough for truth to settle into your bones. This is no longer about the excitement of being chosen or the relief of clarity, it's about sustainability. About whether what was decided can actually be lived. And this is where reality, not emotion, takes the lead. Notice this phase carefully, because the energy is different now. Less charged. Less dramatic. More honest. The intensity has softened into something steadier, and that can feel strange if you're used to love arriving through uncertainty. You might even catch yourself wondering why things feel quieter. That quiet is not absence. It's stability trying to take root. Stay with me here, because your soulmate is now facing the most revealing part of choosing you, consistency without adrenaline. It's easy to feel certain in a moment of emotional clarity. It's harder to carry that certainty into ordinary days, routine conversations, and moments where no big emotion is pushing them forward. Listen closely, because this is where intention either becomes habit, or fades. And habits are what define relationships, not realizations. Stay grounded now, because you may start noticing how their effort shows up in small, unremarkable ways. The follow-through. The way they check in. The way they don't disappear when things get quiet. These moments won't feel cinematic, but they matter more than any dramatic declaration ever could. Pay attention to this, because you are also different now. You're no longer interpreting every action through hope or fear. You're watching from a grounded place. You're not asking, "What does this mean?" as often. You're asking, "Does this feel aligned with what I need?" Stay present, because alignment is the quiet measure of everything now. Not words. Not timing. Not excuses. Alignment. Listen carefully, because this is where trust either strengthens or weakens. Trust doesn't grow through reassurance, it grows through predictability. Through knowing what to expect emotionally. Through not having to guess where you stand. Stay with me, because part 4 is also where patience is tested. Not patience in waiting for them, but patience with the process itself. Building something real takes time, and time reveals whether both people are truly available or just emotionally inspired for a moment. Notice this now, because you might feel moments of doubt resurface. Thoughts like, "Is this actually different?" Or, "Am I being careful or guarded?" Those questions aren't setbacks. They're discernment. You're not closing your heart, you're protecting it intelligently. Stay grounded here, because discernment doesn't kill connection. It filters it. It allows what's healthy to remain and what's unstable to fall away naturally. Listen closely, because your soulmate may feel this shift too. They may sense that you're no longer filling gaps with hope. That you're no longer chasing reassurance. That you're present, but not dependent. That awareness can feel confronting for someone who is still learning emotional consistency. Stay with me, because this is where mutual effort becomes visible. Do they meet you in the middle emotionally? Do they communicate when things feel off? Do they stay present even when vulnerability feels uncomfortable? These are the questions that matter now. Pay attention here, because you don't need to ask these questions out loud. Life will answer them for you through patterns. Patterns never lie. Stay present, because part 4 is also where your boundaries solidify quietly. You're no longer explaining them. You're living them. You don't chase delayed responses. You don't overextend emotionally. You respond from self-respect. Listen carefully, because this is not coldness. It's emotional regulation. It's the result of learning that love doesn't require self-sacrifice to be real. Stay grounded now, because you may notice your nervous system feels calmer around this connection, or you may notice it doesn't. Either awareness is valuable. Your body knows before your mind does. Pay attention to how ease feels. Ease is often overlooked because it's not dramatic. But ease is the sign of emotional safety. And emotional safety is non-negotiable if something is going to last. Stay with me, because this is where old versions of you might resurface briefly. The version that overgave. The version that waited silently. The version that accepted uncertainty. Notice them, then let them pass. You don't live there anymore. Listen closely, because part 4 is about integration. Integrating what you learned from the past with how you act now. You're not reactive anymore. You're responsive. Stay present here, because responsiveness is powerful. It means you're choosing your reactions instead of being controlled by them. It means you're aligned with yourself first. Notice something important now, because choosing you also means your soulmate is being asked by life to mature emotionally. Not everyone rises to that call. Some do. Some don't. And you don't need to rescue anyone who resists growth. Stay grounded, because your role is no longer to wait, convince, or accommodate. Your role is to observe, participate honestly, and walk away if alignment fades. Listen carefully, because walking away is no longer a threat, it's an option you trust yourself to take if needed. That trust changes everything. Stay with me, because this stage isn't about endings or promises. It's about living in the truth of what is happening now. Not what might happen. Not what you hope will happen. Notice how time feels here. Slower. More spacious. Less urgent. That's because you're no longer living in emotional suspense. Stay present, because emotional suspense is exhausting. Peace feels unfamiliar at first, but it's healing. Listen closely now, because this is where confidence stabilizes. You're no longer asking if you're enough. You're asking if the connection is mutual. That shift protects your heart. Stay grounded, because part 4 is not dramatic, but it's decisive. It determines whether this choice becomes a foundation or a lesson. Pay attention here, because either outcome still honors you. Growth doesn't require permanence. It requires honesty. Stay with me, because the storm is fully behind you now. What remains is clarity, self-trust, and a grounded sense of direction. Breathe. You are no longer waiting in uncertainty. You are standing in awareness. And whatever comes next will meet you exactly as you are now. Steady, discerning, and rooted in self-respect. Stay with me until the very last line, because this ending isn't meant to rush you into relief or certainty. It's meant to land softly and stay with you long after the words stop. This is the point where everything you've experienced settles into wisdom, not as a lesson you force yourself to accept, but as a truth you carry naturally. Notice how different you feel now compared to when this journey began. Not because everything is resolved, but because you are no longer fragmented. You're not split between hope and fear, waiting and wondering, holding on and letting go. You're standing in one place internally. And that place feels solid. Breathe into that for a moment, because this is what emotional completion feels like. Not excitement. Not closure tied to another person's actions. But steadiness. The kind that doesn't need reassurance to survive. You've reached a point where you understand something deeply. Being chosen is meaningful, but being aligned is essential. You no longer confuse attention with commitment, or intention with action. You see the difference now, and that clarity protects you. Stay present with this understanding, because it didn't come easily. It came through waiting, through uncertainty, through moments where you questioned yourself. And yet, instead of hardening, you softened in the right places and strengthened in others. That balance is rare. Notice how your relationship with time has changed. You're not counting days or measuring effort the same way. You're allowing space for things to reveal themselves. That patience isn't passive. It's grounded. It comes from trusting yourself to respond wisely instead of reacting emotionally. Sit with this truth, because you're no longer afraid of outcomes. You're not clinging to one version of how things must unfold. You know now that whatever unfolds, you will meet it with clarity and self-respect. That confidence doesn't shout. It hums quietly underneath everything you do. You've also learned that love doesn't have to arrive wrapped in chaos to be real. It can arrive steadily. Consistently. With effort that doesn't need to be announced. And if it doesn't arrive that way, you no longer convince yourself it will change, eventually. That's not cynicism. That's wisdom. Pause here, because this is where many people feel a strange grief, not for what they lost, but for what they tolerated before knowing better. Let that grief pass through you without judgment. You didn't fail. You learned. And learning always reshapes us. You now understand that choosing yourself doesn't mean rejecting others. It means refusing to abandon your needs to keep connection alive. It means knowing that love which requires self-erasure isn't love that sustains. Feel how calm that realization is. Not empowering in a dramatic way, but anchoring. It gives you a center you can return to no matter what happens externally. At this point, whether your soulmate continues forward in alignment or slowly falls away, you will remain whole. You won't scramble to interpret silence. You won't chase clarity that isn't offered. You won't betray your intuition to preserve comfort. That's the real ending here. Because endings aren't about people leaving or staying. They're about cycles completing. And this cycle, the one where uncertainty ruled your emotions, has come to a close. You may still feel tenderness. You may still care. Those feelings don't disappear just because you're wiser. But they no longer control your sense of self. They exist within you, not over you. Notice how you don't need to rehearse conversations anymore. You don't imagine alternate outcomes or rewrite the past in your head. You're here. In the present. And the present feels enough. That's when you know something has healed. You've also learned that consistency is louder than promises, presence louder than words, and effort louder than intention. You don't need to demand these things anymore, you simply notice whether they exist. And if they don't, you don't collapse. You adjust. That adjustment is self-love in action. This ending isn't dramatic because real growth rarely is. Real growth is quiet. It's choosing differently without announcing it. It's walking away internally before you ever have to do it physically. It's staying open without being exposed. You are no longer waiting to be chosen in the dark. You are choosing clarity in the light. And here's the most important part, really listen to this. Nothing about this journey was wasted. Not the confusion. Not the waiting. Not the emotional stretching. It all shaped you into someone who now knows how to love without losing themselves. That knowledge will follow you into every connection from here on. It will guide you toward people who meet you where you stand, not where you hope they'll grow into. You don't need to force endings anymore. You let alignment decide. If this connection deepens, it will do so on stable ground. If it fades, it will do so without tearing you apart. Either way, you remain intact. That's freedom. So take one more deep breath here. Let your shoulders relax. Let the weight you were carrying quietly fall away. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to wait for confirmation. You don't need to replay the past. You're here. You're present. You're grounded. And whatever comes next will meet a version of you who is calm, clear, and deeply rooted in self-respect. This chapter doesn't end with certainty. It ends with strength. And that strength will carry you exactly where you're meant to go next.